Oscar Piastri secures a lights to flag victory as he goes and takes himself just that little bit closer to Lando Norris in the Drivers' Championship. Now, over the course of this weekend, Oscar Piastri has been on hot form for McLaren and he's certainly put himself well into contention for that Drivers' Championship after round 4 this season. Now, there was a lot of controversy and a lot of problems across the course of this Bahrain GP, including penalties, timing issues, DRS issues for the grid, and everything of the sorts. Now, obviously, over the course of this weekend, we've seen how dominant McLaren can be, and we saw that none more so than in that final stint with Oscar Piastri, who I think pulled out over a 12-second gap on the Mercedes in second place. Now, obviously, across the course of this race weekend, there's been some very, very interesting talking points, especially with the likes of Lewis Hamilton in his poor qualifying session, and his race pace hasn't quite been there across the course of the season, but there's no sort of talking points around the likes of Fernando Alonso or Nico Hülkenberg and things like that. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Formula 1 content heading your way. Make sure you hit that like button as well and drop a comment to let me know your driver of the day for this race in Bahrain, as it really helps the channel boost itself through the algorithm. And obviously, we're trying to keep up to date with everything news, previews and review related for Formula 1 this season. So if you have not done so already, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, drop a comment and hit that like button, and I'll catch you in the next part of this video. Who are ultimately in similar positions. Now, obviously, shall we get on to talking about everything that went on in the race and how it has gone for every team across the order. Now, obviously, we'll start off at the back with Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto. Bortoleto finishing last in the pack, 19th place for a second race running. Poor performance from the Sauber, and I just think, as I said yesterday, Bortoleto just isn't quite giving me those vibes anymore, and it's quite disappointing, but I think it's more down to the fact that the car is probably quite shit at Sauber, so we sort of have to move along with that. Nico Hülkenberg finishing in P14, he's the beneficiary of a couple of penalties down that bottom end of the grid. Decent for Hülkenberg, obviously qualifying in P13, only losing a place. Same with Gabi Bortoleto, really. But just a disappointing day on the whole. We then go on to the VCARB duo of Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson. Isaac Hadjar finishing in P15, but finished P16 on the road. Liam Lawson finished P14, but then had a 5-second penalty, I think it was, might have been 10, which dropped him all the way back down the order into P17 for his second P17 in a row. Disappointing for the VCARB duo. Obviously, Hadjar so close to getting into Q3 yesterday, ultimately then just not quite having the pace in the race this afternoon. We then go on to the Williams duo of Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. Alex Albon finishing in a nice P12. Carlos Sainz had to retire the car after a collision with Yuki Tsunoda, which brought out a safety car. It was quite a poor situation for both Yuki and Carlos Sainz. Made contact going into the corner, made contact on the way out of the corner. There was bits of car blowing everywhere, which obviously is the reason why we ended up with a safety car. But for Carlos Sainz, the damage that he suffered, there was no way he was going to be able to make it to the end of the race, missing a whole chunk out of his side pod. And ultimately, Yuki Tsunoda probably maybe deserved a bit of a bigger penalty. I believe we'll get onto him a little bit later on. But Alex Albon, a great race for him. That's his first finish outside of the points this season, finishing in P12. But decent performance for the Williams outfit. Now, the Haas duo of Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman are going to be absolutely delighted with their performance today. Obviously, Behrman qualifying in P20. Esteban Ocon ended up P14 after those changes with Nico Hülkenberg's time and things like that. But today, both drivers get a double points finish. Ollie Behrman, P10, taking 1 point home, as he has done in the last 3 races. That's 3 consecutive points finishes for him. And Esteban Ocon finishing in P8. I think that's 4 points that he'll be taking home for the Haas team. A brilliant display by the Haas duo for me. Obviously, with the poor qualifying session, to then come away with such a really good points haul is something that they'll be really proud of. Now, obviously, Jack Doohan had his best qualifying of the season yesterday, qualifying in P11 today, finishing in P13. Decent race for him. I think he had a couple of penalties as well throughout the course of this race and was on sort of his final strike for track limits, if I remember rightly. I wouldn't say he's disappointed with the 13th place, but I think he's certainly showing he does deserve this place in F1. And although many people, including myself, still think Franco Colapinto will get sort of an opportunity at some point this season. I do think Jack Doohan is doing more than enough to keep himself in a seat. Pierre Gasly qualified in, I think it was P5, ended up finishing in P7 behind Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, but decent displays from Pierre Gasly to pick up a decent haul of points. We then go on to the Aston Martins of Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, and their season just is going worse and worse and worse, with Lance Stroll finishing in P18 and Fernando Alonso finishing in P16. Really disappointing day for the duo at Aston Martin. Obviously, they'll be hoping that 2026 is a much better year with obviously the introduction of Adrian Newey. We then go on to the Mercedes outfit of Kimi Antonelli and George Russell. Obviously, both drivers suffered a one-place grid penalty yesterday as a result of the problems that they faced after the medical car came out for Esteban Ocon's crash during qualifying, which meant they ended up lining up, I think it was P3 and P5. Kimi Antonelli ended up finishing in P11, George Russell in P2. Brilliant race from George Russell, by the way. Absolutely superb. Now, just a little note on George Russell. As I'm talking to you right now, he is under investigation for DRS. He used his DRS when he wasn't supposed to, but there was a load of problems going on with that Mercedes car. Whether he'll end up getting a penalty or not, I don't know. I think 5 seconds would be enough to drop him all the way down to P4, which would give Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris a push up to the podium. But Kimi Antonelli ended up having to do an extra stop compared to everybody else, and just couldn't quite get back through the field. P11, it is a poor result. I think he probably would have finished at about P7, P6, P7 had he not had to make that extra stop. But obviously the safety car came out at a really disappointing time for them. And the only person I think who didn't stop was Max Verstappen in the end. But it was a decent race up until that point for Kimi Antonelli. I think he was trundling about in, I think it would have been P7 at the time. With Lewis Hamilton having overtaken Antonelli, Verstappen, Gasly and all that lot. We obviously then go on to the Red Bull duo of Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda qualifying in P10, Max Verstappen qualifying in P7. Verstappen ended up in P6. Tsunoda ended up in P9, so both making up a place, but that Red Bull just didn't have any pace across the course of this weekend until realistically the last lap when Max Verstappen fully sent it on Pierre Gasly, and I think went 2.5 seconds quicker than Gasly on that last lap, and you wonder why couldn't he do that for a larger majority of the race. But Yuki Tsunoda, points finish for him, decent again. Nothing spectacular, but considering Verstappen was only 6th place, I think you can sort of deal with the circumstances that were faced in front of him. I don't think it's actually that bad considering the circumstance. Verstappen was 34 seconds off the lead. Yuki Tsunoda was 45. So there's about 10 seconds between them, which ultimately over a 57 lap race isn't really that much of a delta. But obviously it shows the difference between the circumstances at the moment. We then go on to the Ferrari duo of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc qualified in P3, started in P2. Lewis Hamilton started in P9. Lewis Hamilton got off to an excellent start at the start of the race. Got past Verstappen, got past the Williams as well, but was then sort of pushed off track by the Williams. I think it was Carlos. It would have been Carlos Sainz, wouldn't it? Who pushed him off track, which then sort of dropped him back into the clutches of Yuki Tsunoda, who had got past. I think it would have been whoever qualified in P8. He got past someone anyway, and was right behind Lewis Hamilton, and ultimately, obviously, then Verstappen then took over, and obviously it was then a sort of a long way round for Hamilton to get himself back in to the rhythm. But a decent end to the race for both Hamilton and Leclerc. P5 and P4, Hamilton P5, Leclerc P4. Leclerc may end up on the podium, obviously waiting for that confirmation of whatever was going on with George Russell. We're still sort of yet to see that yet, but a great race overall for Lewis Hamilton. Ended up picking up driver of the day, and I think it was an excellent performance from Lewis. And I think obviously we've said this a lot over the course of the last few years. If he could sort out his Saturdays, I think he'd have been on course for a podium, especially with the safety car coming when the safety car came. But it's one of those circumstances. Charles Leclerc just a little bit away from the podium as well, obviously being overtaken by Lando Norris at the end. But obviously potential for him to end up in third place, depending on what happens with George Russell. And then on to the final team, McLaren, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Lando Norris finishing in P3. He's finished on the podium at every race so far this season. Oscar Piastri in P1. That's 2 race wins this season for Oscar Piastri. Great for him, brilliant for him. It's one of those where I think he's going to have an excellent season. Oscar Piastri has already shown so far how good he can be. And I think Lando Norris, it's a disappointing display for him, obviously picking up a penalty off the starting blocks from not being in the right position, then obviously overtaking Lewis Hamilton off track, and just in a bit of a mess really. Now, if we do run through the championship standings at the moment, you've got Lando Norris leading the way with 77 points. Oscar Piastri in second with 74. Max Verstappen has 69 in third. George Russell with 63 in fourth. Then a massive drop to Charles Leclerc, 31-point gap. Leclerc is on 32 points. Kimi Antonelli is on 30. Lewis Hamilton on 25. Alex Albon 18. Esteban Ocon on 14, Lance Stroll 10, Pierre Gasly, Nico Hülkenberg and Ollie Behrman all on 6 points, Yuki Tsunoda on 5, Isaac Hadjar on 4, Carlos Sainz on 1, Fernando Alonso, Liam Lawson, Jack Doohan and Gabriel Bortoleto, all non-scorers so far this season. And if we go on to the team standings, I don't actually think they have updated yet, and those driver standings might not have actually updated yet actually. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it does sort of hold up across the course of this season. If we can try and get, I'm not entirely sure what the standings are looking like, but I think that is the standings for the drivers, but I'm not entirely sure for obviously for the constructors. Let's see if I can find it. Just one moment. Like, for me, it was a good race across the course of everybody, really. I don't really think anyone can complain about Oscar Piastri's performance, put in a great day for the McLaren outfit. Can't find the constructors. We'll consider it is that because Oscar Piastri was behind Max Verstappen, but the team's one just hasn't updated yet. We'll hope that updates over the course of the next few hours. But what a performance from McLaren yet again, showing themselves to be the best outfit on the grid. There's a lot of discussion about potential upgrades coming for a lot of teams. I think there's discussions around Ferrari potentially having upgrades for Jeddah, which they might be rushing through because they were supposed to come in Miami, but I believe Miami's a sprint race, which would make that obviously a little bit more difficult to be able to actually get those upgrades on the car. Now, if we do go over to Miami, yeah, Miami is a sprint race, so it will be difficult to sort of get upgrades on the car if sort of that is to be the circumstance. But what will sort of be interesting is who brings upgrades in Saudi. We know there's a big package for Red Bull coming at Imola. And then obviously there's that technical directive change at round 9 for Spain. So it's been a great start to the season so far for Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Max Verstappen had a difficult day today, but I don't really think he'll be complaining much across the course of this season. But it's an Oscar Piastri victory. It's George Russell on the podium with Lando Norris as it stands. That could obviously change across the course of the next few minutes, few hours, whenever. So if it does, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you have not done so already, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Formula 1 content coming your way, news, previews and reviews coming across the course of this season. So if you have not done so already, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I'll catch you in my next one.